Well. Good morning and welcome to Mornings with Lawful, where authenticity lives and thrives to create a space of growth, healing, and joy. I am your host, Andrea Lawful Sanders, and each day we will cover the topics that are informative and engaging while learning from each other. Good morning to each and every one of you. We are literally 10 days away from Christmas, if you can believe it. And this is also the first day of Hanukkah, a Jewish holiday that is celebrated every year. Uh, it is 15 degrees outside. 15 degrees outside. So I'm asking you all to bundle up and make sure that you're okay. Our baby David Alexander Jenkins is, I'll tell you a little bit about him in a minute. Let me do the morning motivation because we need to start here and have a strong discussion about what I am about to read. All right, so here we go. Some years ago, I was given an award, and right after accepting it, a woman walked up to me and said this: "Congratulations, you are the first person who has received this award that wasn't a superintendent of a school, and I guess they're watering down the parameters." I looked into her green eyes of envy and replied, "Thank you. It was nice to be complimented, albeit in a passive aggressive way, but I have always been clear about who you are." Now we're having this conversation quietly, so no one's hearing us, right? It is the wise person that never gets so comfortable with themselves that they show their hands like you just did yours. She recoiled, and the petty smile dropped from her face, even as I kept smiling and holding her hand. Ah. The next year, I was voted in as the leader of that organization and went on with a great team to produce with amazing results for the people we served. That same person came back and said, "I guess I owe you an apology. We underestimated you. You are not moved by attention and accolades like most Black people." See the insult? I have found I cannot trust them because they always turn on each other for promotions. I'm sorry, I can't repeat what I replied here, but rest assured, she gave me wide berth after that, and I did not curse or raise my voice. Never allow anyone to shake you from your square with their insecurities, judgments, and assumptions. Keep your core values firmly in place and keep working. The proof, as they say, is in the pudding. Carry on. If I told you that woman spent the better part of a decade trying to undermine my work, trying to undermine me, trying to find things that she could find to sully my reputation, would you believe me? She could not understand why I wasn't asking for favors, why I wasn't doing like my peers did in the same organization where I was a part of with her. She couldn't understand why I wasn't coming to her to ask for jobs like the other folks did for their wives, their spouses, whatever. She couldn't understand why I wasn't seeking to put my children in special classrooms, etc. In fact, she asked, and I told her, no, thank you, that my children will move on their own merit. You see, when you start to ask for support and help with people who you know are going to take it and throw it back into your face. And you know how I knew? She would sit there and say, well, such and such asked for this and such asked for that in public, in front of a whole group of people. And I looked at her and I said, yeah, I'm not doing that. She went as far as to tell people that if they were caught talking to me, they would be fired or they would get in trouble. The people who spent so what would happen is if I was in church, I would be approached and people would tell me what happened. If I was when my packet was being dropped off every Friday, folks would tell me what happened, what was going on in the school district. People began calling me. This is what's going on, blah, 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 blah. We need you to know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you see, when you stand firmly in your principles, y'all, and you don't acquiesce because you want to be a part of the pack of something, or you want to be, oh my God, I want to be a part of this group. Oh my God, I want to be seen in pictures with this person. Oh my God, I covet this invitation because that's going to mean I am important. You're putting yourselves in absolute danger of people then turning around and using it against you. Walk completely completely in your authenticity. Do not believe that everybody should like you or want you to be a part of XYZ. I recognized early on that I was a danger to this person because I was not falling in line with all the things that she assumed I should be able to do. So as I began to achieve and do certain things and win awards, she would say, I don't understand. What's so special about you? She just couldn't get me out of, I lived rent free in her head, even as I wasn't thinking about her at all the majority of the times, except when I had to work with her. You want to hear the other part of this? You ready? Are you absolutely ready? She adored adored my youngest son. Adored him. Every year would come to get him and take him out for dinner because they shared the same birthday. They shared the same birthday. When I got into this, when I won this political position, she could no longer do it, and I stopped him, But he would email her and say, blah, 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 blah. And she just loved him. She said, if I had a son, it would be him as my youngest son. So juxtapose that. I was an issue for her, but she loved my children. And then she said, my children were raised the white way, WHITE. She just didn't know what to do with me. Just didn't know what to do with me. So people, as I shared that, I came up this morning in my morning motivations, and it was appropriate because all week long I was watching this take place. I need to be a part of this, and I need to be a part of that because, it's this organization or that organization. Or the people who are like, I'm going to separate the people in the pack that I'm a part of so I can show that some people are special when everybody should be special. And it showed up, right? So we have to be very mindful about how we operate. And you know where that comes from? Our core values, our insecurities, our assumptions, and our judgments. We assume that if we belong to a certain group or if we're in a certain tax bracket that we're better than everybody else. We assume if we can buy first class tickets and go on vacation every other month and do this and do that we're better than everybody else. We assume if we can buy the latest, greatest thing that comes out and we can show that we own this thing, we're better than everybody else. We assume that if we're driving a certain car, we're better than everybody else. We make assumptions that if we're in a leadership position and it's elevated, that, 2 steps from the top, or even at the top, we assume we can treat people any old kind of way. I've said this over and again, and I'm going to keep saying it to all of you. The largest currency you have is not money. The largest currency you have is how you treat people around you, whether they can do something for you or not. And people will either respect or disrespect you based on the behaviors and the manner and the tone in which you carry yourselves. So many go into debt, serious debt, to prove that they belong with a certain caliber of people. Just be yourselves. For so many of you, the college degrees are not enough. The square footage of the house is not enough. You're just chasing this elusive power, chasing this elusive, I'm a part of this, chasing this elusive madness when all you have to do is be yourself. Because when you are yourself, you never have to put on airs. You will always find yourself going, okay, all right, this is who I am, blah, 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 blah. I'm not concerned. I went to the Women of Destiny event on Friday morning. Seriously, I got the invitation and I wasn't planning to go, but talked to one of my mentees. I call them Diva Daughters. And she was kind of struggling. She was getting ready to be the moderator for a panel discussion. And she had some thoughts. And then she was talking to me. I said, I'm going to book a train ticket. I'm coming. And sat with her, talked to her, and she's smart. She's really good at what she does. But as I'm sitting there in the room, minding my business, because, when I go into spaces like that, I just say, people say either they know my face or when they ask my name, I say, Andre. I don't even tell them my full name, right? But as I was sitting there loving on and encouraging a bunch of other women were coming over like, oh, it's good to see you. Thank you for when you did this. I remember and I'm just sitting there going, oh my God, things I didn't even remember. If you are just who you are and you treat people well, even when you disagree with them, especially when you disagree with them, then life will fall into place. But the biggest currency you have is how you treat people, y'all. And I cannot overemphasize it. I cannot overstate it because it shows up. When it shows up when you're in trouble. And people just completely go, well, you were always this, so I'm not even gonna. or they just basically kind of leave you off to yourself and say nothing to you. It's okay. Life is cyclical. It's not always going to be, oh my God, I'm so wealthy over here, or oh my God, I have all of this. Sickness, divorce, losing money, all those things come. Now, who you are at your core shows up when those things happen to you. Can you survive on $20? Huh? Can you? If you absolutely have to. If you lose your home tomorrow, do you have somewhere where you can go stay? Do you know, would you be able to survive in an apartment? I've met people who say, I will never live in an apartment. The hell? What is that? What is that? And don't you know when you start to say never, that's how the universe, God shows up and teaches you the lesson every single time? Every single time. So I want us to be better people. I need us to be better people as we navigate through this because life is kind of hellish right now. Now, let me move on. Mm-mm-mm. My baby, I call him my baby. David Alexander Jenkins and I were talking last night, and he said he wasn't feeling well and sent me pictures of him having tea. I left my phone 2 floors away from me because when I am sleeping and I awaken, if my phone is anywhere nearby, it's an automatic thing for me to pick it up. So I took my phone and I put it 2 floors away from me. Best sleep I ever had. Right. And so when I came to retrieve my phone this morning, I saw he's in the hospital. David is not feeling well. And so I want you to send up prayers for him. Make sure he is, and not no pekka prayer. If you know you're not really going to pray, don't say you're going to pray. Just quietly pray for him and make sure he's okay. The cold and flu season is really upon us, and so many people are getting sick. As I traversed back and forth in Ubers and trains and whatever else, I kept a mask firmly ensconced on my face. I was sitting in the Women of Destiny's breakfast when it ended, and all the women were talking to one another, and you could feel the air. I started to cough. I was like, yep, gotta go. I said, I gotta go. I love you all. I gotta go. To the women, to the sisters at the Women of Destiny breakfast that I saw and talked to, there were many, many of you. I wish you, some of them are running for office. I wish you or are currently in office. Some of them are leaders of business and industry. I want you all to recognize and remember that you are who you are and you are in a place and a position for such a time as this. You must use courage. Right? We need to encourage you, but you must use courage as you're moving forward and going forth. Let me read some of the morning things. Okay, and the other thing I want to tell you is this. Next week, shutting down production. I will not be on the air the week of Christmas. I'm going to spend time with my family. I am loving that I'm hanging out with my grandchildren and doing what needs to be done. So that's where I'm going to be next week. Don't even look. Good morning, Dennis. Good morning. Good morning. You also pick up your cakes this week from me. Good morning. Oh my God, there's so much going on over here. You all are talking. Good morning, Laura. I see you too. So come get your cakes. I know Tiffany and a few others have asked when they could get their cakes this week. When those cakes get off my table, I'm done. There are a couple of people who wanted to know if there were any extra cakes. If there is, I will make sure that you know that. But this is the week to pick up your cakes. And so next week for Christmas, good morning, Monica. Good morning, Marguerite. I see all of you. Bobby, thank you. Thank you so much, Jasenia. Good morning. Listen, David needs some of my chicken soup. That's probably true. I will see. I will get. Good morning, Joanna. Good morning, darling. Thank you for sending me that wonderful video yesterday. That encouraged me. I will give David some of my chicken soup. I didn't even think about it. So hit the like and subscribe button, please. Remember, I am not going to be on next week. I love you all, but not that much. Oh, Charmin. Oh, soup. Oh, Charmin, you had your soup. I met Charmin and gave her some soup. My soup takes 3 hours to cook. If you've ever been the recipient of some of my meals, baby, that's all I'm gonna say about that. All right, let's carry on and take on some of the news because there's a lot going on out here in these Wakandan streets. I shut it down for 36 hours. I came back. There was a major shooting at a Jewish event in Australia. All these people dead. Just a lot going on. Bobby Carr says, now what am I going to do next week with this time of the morning? You're going to go back and watch some of the things that are already there. Season 4 of the podcast will be coming up in early New Year. And then you can go watch some of the shows and watch some of the podcasts, right? So you're going to be all right. I will keep you all abreast about David and let us know what he needs. I'm available to stop by if by him if needed. See that, David? You've left a good amount of people in your wake. So, the news. Oh my God, David usually comes on Mondays and covers the news. I gotta do it by myself, and I'm not looking forward to it because, baby, this was written by Newsweek. Jordan King, and it was updated 20 hours ago. A number of Republicans have broken with U.S. President Donald Trump recently, from blocking a redistricting map he backed in Indiana to joining Democrats to restore collective bargaining rights for federal workers and demanding transparency on the Jeffrey Epstein files. These fractures are indeed significant, political professor Christopher Cooper from Western Carolina University told Newsweek. The emerging pattern of Republican discord highlights realigning loyalties and strategic calculations within the GOP. As Trump seeks to consolidate his influence ahead of the critical 2026 elections, instances of opposition from state legislatures to Capitol Hill call into question the extent of his control over a party that has frequently rallied behind his positions. I'm thinking that they're calling him to question now because they know they could lose and possibly lose their seat. So, I'm not sure if this is something that they're doing because what they think he's doing is wrong, or they're trying to protect their seats. See the difference, right? Uh, the public acts of dissent could signal growing fractures within the Republican coalition as the 2026 midterms approach, several political scientists told Newsweek. Although, although there is no question that Donald Trump is still the leader of the Republican Party, it appears that his word is no longer the absolute law of the land for nearly all of Republicans. Child, just a lot going on out here. And then this morning, I saw this. Hollywood Reporter wrote this. It's crazy. Rob and Michelle Reiner were killed in their home. He made a movie about the family's tensions, including with his son, Nick. This was written by Steven Zychik 2 hours ago. On Sunday evening, People magazine reported that Nick Reiner was responsible for the Brentwood homicide of his parents, Rob and Michelle Reiner, while the New York Post said that the 32-year-old is a person of interest in the killings. Law enforcement has not confirmed the outlet's reporting. If Nick Reiner is ultimately alleged to be a suspect, however, it would not mark the first time that tension between the son and his parents has come to the public eye. 10 years ago, Rob and Nick actually made a movie about the challenges the Reiners faced. The young Reiner has long struggled with addiction. The family's 2015 film drama, Being Charlie, documented the resultant struggles, with Nick co-writing the script with a friend from rehab that was inspired by his experience, and Rob directing the movie, drawing off his experience as a parent. Produced and sanctioned by the family, the movie offers an unusually authentic glimpse into what was happening in the Reiner household in those years as Nick's challenges grew. Carrie Yules played the Rob stand-in, and Nick Robinson, the Nick Reiner character. Well, the film was done in 2015. Charlie centers on Charlie Mills, the 18-year-old addict son of David, a movie star who is now running for Congress. Charlie resents the harsh way his father and mother are treating his addiction, which involves mandatory stints in rehab. The movie offers few answers, and it ends with a certain detente and an apology from the dad for sometimes unsympathetic ways he treated his son. An apology Reiner said in an interview at TIFF he owed and gave his son in real life. When Nick would tell us it wasn't working for him, we wouldn't listen, he said. We were desperate, and because people had diplomas on their wall, we listened to them when we should have been listening to our son. The Princess Bride director told the LA Times at a dinner at the festival with a reporter and his family, including Nick, had by then achieved sobriety. So there's something going on here. There's so many things happening in folks' homes. We talk so much about how wonderful things are, and then we never address the things that causes us so much harm. And in this family, you could tell addiction was the issue there. Do you remember my doing an interview some years ago with Congresswoman Madeline Dean and her son? Oh, I've had some great interviews. And her son, who struggled with addiction for God knows how long, and how difficult it was for her to be in the public eye while her son was in the strangest places doing things that he should not be doing. And the thing that stuck with me with Congresswoman Dean when we had that conversation with her son, who was such a nice young man, is that she knew because of who she was. And she admitted it. She said, because of my name, he was not thrown in jail. He was not, they told me to come get him, et cetera, et cetera. And she's very concerned about the amount of folks that are out here that are under the influence of drugs and alcohol and not getting the same treatment. And she just wanted to come clean about, literally, figuratively, literally, about what was going on in her family's house at the time. I need to follow up with her and him to see how they're doing now. But addiction is really rampant in a lot of places. When I work with civil servants, firefighters, and police officers, they would tell me the amount of addiction that's going on in their homes. And this is not just, this is literally in and I won't name because I do it all over the country. When we talk to them in one particular state that I was in, the firefighters say it's heartbreaking to go into the homes and see that the parents had padlocked their bedroom doors and taken anything of value out of their other parts of their home and locked it behind one closed door, and how devastating it had been to them for them to deal with it. So, and that was literally before we talk the way we talk about addiction today. It was, everybody kept saying, what are we going to do? This is really horrible, blah, 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 blah. So I'm thinking this was around 2014, 15, right? When I heard that story. And it's only gotten more challenging as we move along. So just be really careful and mindful. And we tend to want to judge, but we just don't know. We don't know. I pray and thank God every day, and I check in with my children every day. Are you guys okay? What do you need? Always making sure, quietly watching to make sure that they're not, falling down a pit of despair somewhere, anywhere. We tend to be really harsh on our children. And again, I don't know what happened here. I don't know if Nick killed his father, but we've seen many instances where parents have just put their children out. And look, you can't blame them, because the being addicted ravages the person who is being addicted, and it ravages the families that are impacted by that addiction. It is no damn joke, right? So I just want you to make sure that we think through that and have a conversation around what's going on. Tiffany, remember that. Laura says, rest in peace, Meathead. He did some wonderful things in his life. Marguerite says, addiction is not new. It's not a new community issue. It is only now that people are speaking up and being transparent. Marguerite, years ago, sitting in Abington, and I mean years ago, I'm thinking, 2010, 2011, I saw a bunch of teenagers just sitting by the local 7-Eleven, and they looked high. And so I began questioning what is going on. And we kept hearing things like, oh, it's not the children here, it's the people coming from out of Philadelphia. And then it was the drugs are coming out of Philadelphia. And I sat up in a meeting one day and I said, what the hell? Is Philadelphia the bane of everybody's existence? What are you talking about? Can we address what's going on? And so they had a group of people come to talk about addiction. This is 2010, 2011, and what to look for, and the medications, and blah, 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 blah. And there were so many people quietly sitting in the room with their legs crossed, looking like, this is happening, but I can't really talk about it. Or why don't we do something about the drugs coming into our community? We have to always be mindful not to just be so siloed about what we want for where we are, and this has been impacting a lot of people. So now, 2010, 2020, 15 years later, there's this major conversation. And back then, no one was talking about it. It was a quiet conversation around what's going on in our communities and how can we help our children and what do we need to do. Major, right? So we have to be careful. Tiffany says, I check in with my son every day. Their struggles are so real. It absolutely is. And when your children come to you and say, I am depressed, and you go, what are you depressed for? My life was much harder. Stop doing that, please. You don't know what they're dealing with and handling that they're not discussing with you in the moment. And if they find the courage to come and say something to you, then you want to sit still and ask the transparent questions. What makes you feel depressed? And they'll say, you know, I don't, this is what I'm dealing with at work. Sometimes it's struggles at work. Sometimes it's struggles in life, trying to pay the bills. There are more bills than there are money. Saying things like my friends are doing better than I am. Don't ridicule your children. Ask them. I sat in my son's house and heard one of his friends say, "Your son has bought 2 houses, and he seems to be doing well." As you know, and he said, "We all look up to him." I said, "But my son has his struggles too. You think it's easy to manage this house and his wife and his children and his dogs?" And so I made him see the other side, because what I don't want people to assume is that it is easy. That it is easy for them. Laura says, so many suburbanites driving to Philly to pick up drugs. That's the reality. And not only that, many of them are leaders of business and industry. I had a conversation with a well-known newscaster who will remain nameless, who told me that as I was taking them home from an event where we both attended, that named the leaders of major industry here in Philadelphia that could be found in Kensington, just scoping and taking their drugs, getting their drugs, and no one questioned it, right? And so there's a lot of people that are functioning addicts right in front of our faces that are leading hospitals and uh, just all sorts of things. So just be mindful and don't assume that it's only just folks who are poor. And quite frankly, a lot of these children that are coming into Kensington have parents with money. Money can't solve the addiction issues, right? You just have to literally work and find out what's going on. And many of them started when they had an injury playing sports and was given the high dosage of medication, and then they became addicted. So you want to make yourself aware, learn what's happening to these children. And now it's just, I don't feel good. And many of them also have parents who are addicted, right? It's a part of their DNA. So we have to be mindful not to be judgmental. Um, Tiffany says, nope, it's the children in the suburbs, needles on the trail, drinking at people's houses, and they were in high school. Yes. And while I sat on the school board, I would hear stories of children whose parents sanctioned them having parties in the home. They would take their parents' pills. All of them would come together, take pills that they found in their parents' homes, and throw the pills in a bowl. And then they would just start taking the pills. And I called when I, first time I heard this, I went home and I said, yo, sons, come talk to your mother. They come to like, oh Lord, what did you find at the school board meeting now? I said, such and such and such and such and such and such. They were like, oh yeah, mommy, this been going on for a long time. I said, well, they said, the only thing we can do is not attend these parties. We know what's happening. And because we know you sit on the school board and we'd rather face Jesus than you having to come pick us up from a police station, we choose not to attend these things, right? So but again, if I was not having conversations with them, consistent conversations with them to talk about what was going on, I would not have been aware, right? I remember sharing with all of you that my youngest son, when his brother went off to college, I was like, what the hell is wrong? Why are you so all over the place? His grades dropped, blah, 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 blah. And one day I was cleaning in the living room and I moved the sofa and found an empty bottle of alcohol. And I called him because he was the only one living in the house with me at that point. And I lifted the bottle and I didn't say anything. And he burst into tears and said, I really miss my brother. I said, how long have you been drinking? He said, I'm not out drinking with friends. He said, one of my friends gave me this bottle of alcohol. And so I was sipping it little by little until I emptied the bottle. And so we began having a conversation about alcohol, blah, 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 blah. I did not get angry with him. And then I drove him that weekend to go see his brother. The look on his face when he saw his brother walking down from his dorm made me realize that had I not begun to have the conversation with him, I don't know where he would have gone. Today, at what is he? He's turning 30 next year. He said, Mommy, I drink socially. I'm not putting myself into that madness. And then he said, He and his friends have decided that instead of drinking socially, they will just, stop drinking cold turkey and drink mocktails, etc., etc. So you have to have the conversations. You have to have the conversations in a way that's meaningful, because he could have easily become addicted and I wouldn't have known. Now he's leading teams of people being scooped from one organization to the next in marketing. He's killing the game. But had I done in that moment was, oh my God, I can't believe it, blah, 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 blah. And don't you know, blah, blah. I didn't do any of that. I didn't do any of that. So and you can feel disappointed as a parent. You can, because sometimes, but remember when you were a child? Do you remember the things you got into when you were a child? There was just no internet. None of these things were around for people to say, oh my God, I saw your daughter doing XYZ. If you sit back and think about all the things you got yourselves into when you were younger, then maybe you would listen to your children a little bit more. And so this is good. These conversations have to happen. So now we're having a whole dialogue because Rob Reiner, a gifted man, and his wife were allegedly killed by their child. Talk to your children. Stop demeaning them. Stop telling them, oh, well, I can't, if I were you, blah, 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 blah. Because it's when they feel that their voices are heard and they feel like someone is actually listening to them that they will find the courage to come to you and say, this is what happened today. This is what happened yesterday. You just please, I'm begging you. Tamara says, I have seen and covered addictions of people in very high places. You can't help until they're ready for help. It's way more common than you know. Absolutely. So I was in Martha's Vineyard. My mother passed away in April of 23. A friend of mine who was in media in South Carolina sent me a message, and she said, I see the devastation on your face. She said, I own a cottage in Martha's Vineyard, and I'd like to send you there for 3 days or 4 days, whichever day. And she said, pick a date. And so I went. I'm telling you, I have amazing friends. And so I grabbed Denise. Come on, Denise! And off we went. And so we went to Martha's Vineyard, to my car on the ferry, and over there we went. And Denise and I were driving, and I passed an art shop, and I kept saying to her, the shop is calling me. I don't know what the hell is inside of that shop, but every time we would go by, there was no place to park. I said, Denise, I'm not leaving this island until I walk into that art gallery. The day before we left Martha's Vineyard, I found a spot. I wheeled my car in. I think half my behind was hanging out into the road, but I was like, I jumped in and went inside, and I said to the owner, the man, I said, something about this place kept dragging me in here. Tell me your story. What is your story? And he looked at me and he says, first of all, there's something different about you because I have a story. He was a medical doctor who drank so much, passed out all over the place. He lost his license. He was disgraced. I can't remember if he spent any time in jail, but his addiction was so bad. He literally had to disappear. And as he was regaining, he said he had been in and out of recovery, in and out of rehab, and nothing would fix it. His bottom was losing his medical license, losing his family, losing everything. And he said one day in the middle of his recovery for God knows the umpteenth time, he picked up a camera and started taking pictures. In fact, I'm looking at a picture. I got 3 pictures from him that he took, and he was so good at the camera. That's how he began making a living again. And in fact, I interviewed him. I'm telling you, I interviewed him. I'm telling you, I've got some of the best guests. If y'all would just go back and watch some of them things, you'd be like, oh. And he said, addiction is not something you ever get over. It's a day by day thing. You have to make the decision daily. He said, do I crave drinking? Yes, I do. He said, but it's a daily, sometimes minute by minute decision that I am making to choose not to pick up a bottle to drink. Right? So let's really address what it is. It's not as simple as, so when you see, like I saw my son, I saw the bottle under the empty alcohol bottle, and I was like, when did you start drinking? Then I got to the point, the bottom of it. The bottom of it was he missed his brother who had gone off to college. That was his best friend. It's still his best friend. You should see them when they see each other. Brother! And they hug and they tell each other what they're doing with their jobs, their lives, etc. You never know what will trigger a child or an adult, or it could be DNA. For this doctor, he said it was in his family, that alcoholism ran through his family, and he just thought he could do whatever he needed to do and he would be fine. It took him all the way to ground zero. So if you know there is addiction in your family, in my family, my uncles, my mother's brothers, all of them were alcohol. Every last one of them. My sisters and I don't touch alcohol. We just leave it alone, right? And I told my children the same thing. I said it's in the DNA, right? It's maybe one or two generations removed, but it's there. So I want you to all pay attention. So and then ask the question. Ask the question. Stop judging, y'all. Stop judging. Find what it is. Let me, because there's a lot of you all were talking. Lord have mercy. And Laverne says, and being in addiction doesn't change your mindset. If you live well, it makes it worse. In your mind, you are not at rock bottom. I did the research, and new addiction would put my son at risk. Tamara says, there was a woman I cared for in early 20s. Her mother needed surgery. We took her to Cooper. The morning before the surgery, the surgeon died in the OR before the first cut. He had an overdose. Crazy as hell. These stories. Winetta says, a couple of days ago, a famous opera singer in New York, son killed him. It's been said mental illness was the case. That's the other thing. Young folks try to manage, and adults try to manage mental illness by taking drugs and drinking alcohol, right? So Marguerite said, it is my opinion that people never recover from addiction. Oftentimes they leave one addiction and go to another. There are people who have been living sober or without drugs for decades, but they will tell you that they still get the feeling that they want to. Let me see this. There's more here. Viola says, alcoholism was heavy in my family. My mom, her father, uncles, aunts, and my husband. So yeah. Laura says, I need to work with my niece who has mental issues. She refused to take her medication and would talk to herself. She would not get help, and her habits put my life in danger. I had to cut the ties. But what happens when you're a parent and you see that your child is heavily mental illness and is causing all kinds of issues for them? Can you cut the ties? Right? Whew. Laverne says, the parents cutting their children off is becoming a stern thing. You know my story. Yeah. Ooh, child. Laverne says, wow. Shaquilla says, I remember that interview. Yo, Shaquilla, I've interviewed some amazing folks. You hear me? And when I asked them what made them call or decide that they wanted to be interviewed here, they said because I was fair, right? And it was a conversation. They felt like I was listening to them versus just asking them a bunch of questions. It's a gift. It really is. Because there are times when I'm sitting in the interview process and in my head, I'm going, holy shit. This is really happening in people's homes. You just don't know. Tiffany says, yes, mental illness, self-medicate with drugs and alcohol. Laverne says, my children's father sold drugs. Ooh. He sold them to people that worked in corporate. There are many with addictions that we talk to daily. Yeah. Laverne says, you want to fix them as a parent. You can't. You had to what, Laverne? So the thing is, the trick is knowing your children well enough to understand and see things early on. Right? You know your children, you go, there's something. So that's why when I bring therapists on here, like Mary Alyssa May, when you see them changing and they, the loss of appetite, and they used to be social and now they're not social anymore, or they're spending a whole bunch of time in their rooms and they're eating in their rooms and they don't want to come out and talk. You know your children well enough. You can say, this is a new thing. What's happening? Start doing a little bit of investigation. We're often so busy in our own lives that we just don't see the things as they're going on, as they're happening, or we see it and we pretend like it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Wow. Wow. Tamara says, my God. I know of a woman that needed a fifth of vodka to function, not black, CEO, and at the time of a major bank in New Jersey. First time I'd met known a functional alcoholic. A fifth of vodka? How much is a fifth of vodka? To function, huh? So when we sit here and we have the conversations, there's so many people in our sphere. And this conversation is not one of judgment, it's one of understanding. If you're listening to me right now, if you're watching me on YouTube or on Facebook, then you know that we're not coming from a place of judgment. It's a place of understanding, trying to understand what's happening when people act a certain way, behave a certain way. Someone said to me a couple of days ago, I said such and such and such and such had a cold, and they said no, they were high. I was like, wait, what? They're like, no, they were not cold. They didn't have a cold. They were high. I literally watched them. They were absolutely high. I've seen this over and again. Major mover and shaker. So again, we have to, this is why I tell you all the time, stop trying to pretend to be everything to everybody and wanting to be in every room and in every space and to be seen. We are often running from the voices that we hear when everything is quiet and still. Embrace those voices. Embrace yourself. There are things that I'm dealing with right now, and I'm like, Lord Jesus. And I would go lay in a corner and I would think it through. And I say, all right, then I call my husband and I say, come on, let's talk. And we talk the stuff through. But when we don't want to face what is in front of us and we hide from it, we spend all our time running to this event and that event and that event. But at some point, you've got to slow down and take a nap and go to sleep. And that's when, in that still, quiet moment, you start to hear the things that have been concerning you, that you've stuffed down and gone to event after event and stuffed down and ran on vacation and stuffed down and until you can't stuff it down anymore. Yeah. Oh my God. Whew. Shaquilla says one drink can take a recovering addict out. Monica says alcoholism was a major thing for many in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Ooh. Wow. Functioning alcoholics, mother, father, uncles, siblings. I praise God for sparing me and my children. Jesus. Viola says the ones in my family were functional. They worked every day. Tamara said that same woman died when they entered treatment. Her body couldn't stand the shock. Wow. That's my friend Lisa says, yeah, you know, you got to be careful to just cut them off cold turkey because they will. They will. Oh, wow. Shaquilla says, I made sure my daughters knew that addiction runs in our family, drugs, alcohol, and food. And those honest conversations is what gets us to where we need to be to save our families and ourselves. Truly, right? We don't ignore these things. Mental illness is a beast. It is a beast. And we tend to, I can't do it because, they're different and they're strange and they oh my God. Laverne says, my stepfather drank so much, the doctors told him if he drink, he will die. He stopped drinking, he will die. Wow. My stepfather drank so much, the doctors told him if he drink, he will die. If he stops drinking, he will die. He ended up dying from a car accident. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Wow. One of my mother's brothers that I knew and recently died in the last year was a raving alcoholic, like major electrical engineer, but just could not let the alcohol go. And then when he was diagnosed as diabetic, he still could not stop drinking. So he went blind. He couldn't stop drinking. They took off his big toe. He wouldn't stop drinking. They took off all the toes on that foot. He couldn't stop drinking until his body said, no more, no more. After my mother passed away, he passed away not too long after. But we have to have these honest conversations because this stuff passes down to the children. And we keep it, well, I am such and such of such and such an organization, and I've got this going and I've got that going. But you're passing out in your office because you drank so much and you could not stop yourself. That's not judgment. That is, let's have the conversation so we can save your life. We can save your kidneys, your liver, and your life. Because it's easier said than done, right? Laverne says, yep, I had the conversations, and my son went to college and did his own thing. His drug of choice became his superpower. Wow. I just never know what kind of conversations we're going to have when I come on the air, especially when I don't have a guest. Ooh, Tiffany says, my oldest cousin died in his 50s. He was a functioning alcoholic. He had to have a kidney transplant, got it from his sister, but still couldn't stop drinking. Do you see the hold it has on people? So you're thinking, you had a brand new kidney. Why the hell are you still drinking? Blah, 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 blah. Don't judge, y'all. Don't judge. I pray and thank God every day. Continue to have the conversations with your children. Continue to have the conversations with other family members. Ask the questions. Ask the questions, right? Because it's just not easy. And if you're under the sound of my voice and you struggle with alcohol, I'm open to have the conversation. I'm open to seriously sitting down and figuring out how I can help you. This is no joke. Being severely alcoholic can stop you from getting pregnant. Your babies can have fetal alcoholic syndrome. Not fetal. Is fetal? I can't remember. It sounds different. It sounds weird to me. But it's alcoholic syndrome that can happen to your babies in utero. All those things. So just be really mindful. Um, Monica says addiction and mental illness happens when the world and sadness overtakes us. It exacerbates it. It exacerbates it because for someone who never struggled with mental health, this last year when this new regime came in and I was like, this is going to happen. And everybody's like, you're crazy. And when it started happening, I'm like, okay, God, I don't want to be aware anymore because I sense and feel things long before they happen. So last November, when the president won the election, I said things are about to shift in a really horrific way for many people. And there were folks in my group that were like, well, you exaggerate much as it can, and we have all these branches of government and blah, 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 blah. And my spirit says, cut them off and let them go because the minute it's by the time they figure out what is actually happening here, it's going to be too dangerous. And you can't sit in rooms and have conversations with people transparently about the things that you're going through and dealing with or that you're hearing when these folks don't believe that what is about to happen is about to happen. Sure enough, right? So just please, 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 please. It's fetal alcoholic syndrome. Thank you all. I appreciate it. He's still talking. Let's see. Laverne says you have to be strong and have a strong child to stay away from the drugs and alcohol. A weak person will think it won't happen to them and do it anyway. Viola says if fathers are in drugs and alcohol, daughters usually follow. Must have strong will. One of my 4 daughters. Yes. Jesus. Whoo. I'm sorry to hear that, Viola. Fetal alcohol syndrome. Tiffany says alcohol and drugs weakens your heart and organs. The irony is you may stop drinking, but the damage to your body is done. So as we bump into this holiday, as we get into this holiday and we are getting ready to celebrate and have all the things and do all the things, let's be mindful, right? If you know someone in your group drinks way too much alcohol, make sure you are because again, no judgment. Make sure you're the designated driver. Make sure they don't get behind the wheel of a car, right? Because they can kill themselves and kill somebody else. And then let's start to do some research, every one of us, around how do we help someone who's struggling with drugs and alcohol? What are the benefits and the services that are in place for them? And knowing, depending on where they are in their journey, how can they stop, if at all? Oh, God, just talking about it just makes me, it's a lot. It's a lot. But go back and have the conversation. And Viola, if you know your husband was an alcoholic, and at least one of your children is, then you know that's you can't come from a place of judgment. You can't say your father drank and so you can't drink. That's not that is DNA. That's hereditary. And if you think that part through, then when that child or that person in your family is consistently drinking and not doing what they're supposed to do, then you understand what's happening here. You then show up as support, not judgment, right? It's so incredibly So incredibly difficult. So incredibly difficult. Whoo. Laverne says lots of prayer and don't offer it. Don't have it around them. Yes. 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 Agreed. Agreed. Tough. It's tough. When fathers are alcoholics, daughters usually follow. Yeah. 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 I have a family member who everyone look, high achieving, doing all the things, and has been functioning as an alcoholic and pretending like everything is everything. And um, family protected her, her mother protected her, and when she saw my sisters and I at our mother's funeral, she was so shocked by how high achieving we were and that we were all married, because there was an assumption made that because we didn't have that person's career that we couldn't possibly do as much as what I didn't. I start the show this way? Didn't I say this? Stay in your most authentic place. You're not all not only going to be judges and doctors and lawyers and all the things. If you stay in your most authentic place, you will succeed at whatever it is that you put your mind to. It's amazing. She says, Laverne says, spend as much time with them to keep them distracted from themselves. Addicts also isolate themselves too. Wow, it's just a lot. It's a lot. I'm grateful. I was going to spend the morning reading the news, but we got to Rob Reiner that his son suffered from addiction, and we went straight down into the tunnel around addictions and what that means. Um, whew. I saw another friend that I hadn't seen in decades recently, and he just wouldn't stop. He drank for 8 solid hours. And I said, why? What's happening? What's happening? And I was told that's just who they are. They're somebody. They were at a major job in a major news station, and said they couldn't do it anymore. Right. So just please, y'all, ask the questions. And if you know that's what they do to keep themselves functional, then don't encourage them with and I mean, drank. I could not believe how much alcohol they drank. I said, oh my God, this is what's going on out here. But again, not from a place of judgment, from a place of trying to understand, right? Viola says she found the empties after her husband passed. Wow. Wow. I don't know what the answers are. I know that prayer, while it works, requires prayer and working, right? You're going to try to figure out how you can support and do what you need to do. And it's also important that when you have a family member that is struggling with addiction or with mental health, that you envelop yourselves around them and the family members that are helping them, right? Please, please, please don't stop acting like, oh my God, I don't really want to be. Don't do that. You may not understand it, right? But there are folks out here that have been diagnosed with 7 or 8 different mental health diagnoses. That's a lot. That's a lot. So the other thing I want to say to all of you is, when you get into relationships, before you decide to get married and have children, ask the family here. Y'all are so busy boo loving. My husband and I were talking yesterday. He said, I share things with you I don't think I never share with anybody else. I said, that's because you instinctively knew that whatever you shared was not going to go any further than you and I, right? But you want to know mental health issues in the family? Yes, no, check. You get to make the decisions. Alcoholism in the family? Yes, no, check. Got to make the decisions. Because there's more than at least a 50% chance that whoever you give birth to, that's the issue, right? And it will show up in your children and you wonder why. And you never said. The same way you check to see if someone carries the sickle cell traits or the thalassemia traits, or whether they had something else that could be passed on in the family. Ask about that too, right? Because it takes 30 seconds for a sperm to hit an egg. It takes a lifetime to go through all of this stuff. A lifetime. Make the decision. Tiffany McIntyre says they have to address the mental issues that brought them to the drug and alcohol. Oh, wow. Laverne says, as a mom dealing with this, it's easier for me to be transparent than it is to talk to friends. People are very judgmental, intentional, and unintentional. She said it's easier for her to be publicly transparent than to talk to her friends. Wow. 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 But Laverne, I remember you calling and talking to me. You didn't know, I mean, you really didn't know me. So I'm grateful that we had the conversation. So much going on. So much. She says, facts, Andrea. I found out the things after I had the children. Do it beforehand. Absolutely. 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 Right? Because then, these children who are not asked, once the sperm hit the egg and that baby comes out and you start seeing signs of all these things, it's a lot, right? Marguerite says, being transparent. I struggled with alcohol addiction while in the military, being away from home. I have gone through decades of sobriety, yet I have broken sobriety often. Monday, it will be a year. Oh, I love you, my sister. I love you, my sister. We did not know that. Oh, yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Laverne says, my spirit tells me who to talk to and people tell me who not to talk to. Continue to follow your spirit, Miss Capricorn. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Marguerite, thank you for sharing that. You didn't have to, but now, now we can support you, right? Now we can support you. So it's been a year. Monday will be a year. Congratulations on a year of sobriety. Congratulations. Yeah. Donette says, absolutely ask the questions and be strong enough to make the best decision for yourself. Absolutely. Winetta says, are you saying you don't have friends? I don't think that's what she's saying. She's just saying the friends that she have can be judgmental. Um, you know, and we do. We make all these decisions. I have said to you all 1,000 times, in a world where you can be anything, be kind. And sometimes being kind is just being quiet and letting the people express themselves and vent without judgment. We always have you should. Stop telling people they should. You should do this and you should do that. No, you are just there to listen. Keep your mouth. Close your mouth, open your ears, and listen to what people are saying to you. Right? And if they feel that they can trust you and that you, while they're being transparent, they will come back and let you know. And then you say, would you like some support? Would you like some advice? Then you offer your advice, and your advice should not come and you should. How can I support you? What are some of the things that you have done to try and help yourself? Stuff. Those are the questions you ask, right? Um, Oh, Tamara says, Marguerite, you are a star. Thank you for sharing. Yes, 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 yes. Laverne says, I have friends, but again, people can be unintentionally judgmental. Yep. That's why we need to close our mouths and open our ears. Oh, Marguerite, look at that. Look at that, Marguerite. That's awesome. See what happens when you open now? Tiffany says, love you, Marguerite. Do what you were doing. If you fall off, get back on. Congratulations, Jasenia. It's an everyday battle. Wow. Marvel what to do when the child is in denial. You continue to support them until they're ready to have the dialogue. You are. You just continue to support them until they're ready, until they've reached their end. You can't. The more you try to force them, the worse it gets. Just continue to support them until they come to you and say, "I've done all that I can," and they will. They will when they hit rock bottom. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, Tamara says, I think it's easier to be real with people you may never see in real life versus those that can reach out and physically touch you. It's more of our own stuff than the people that care about us. Laverne says, hugs to you, Marguerite. Marguerite says, I found that I broke sobriety at times when people, supposed friends, judged me for not drinking. Bump them. Literally. Literally. Laverne says your child will be in denial when you use the wrong words out of concern. They say you are judging them. Yeah, yeah. All right, guys. So it's a snow day for my grandchildren. I'm going to take bye, Tiffany. I'm going to take this opportunity to go spend the morning with them and go play in the snow, such that it is. This episode of Mornings with Lawful is officially over. I am Andrea Lawful Sanders. I'll see you when I see you. Bye, everybody. Come pick up your cakes, y'all. Come pick up your diggity dang cakes. There's a bunch of cakes sitting on my table, my dining room table. Come pick up your cakes. I love you all. See you soon.